It is the pink elephant theory. If the guest wants a pink elephant, get them a pink elephant. If you can't find a pink elephant, get a horse, paint it pink, convince the guest it's an elephant. Do whatever it takes to ensure they're happy. That's it. Are they happy? We are back. Chris Adams with you. It is the Pink Elephant Podcast. I'm super excited today. I have what I consider friends on the show, but also insanely just very talented individuals with an unbelievable journey to get to a place that they are contributing a lot to the hospitality industry in an area that most people probably don't think about, but it has a huge impact on what we do. I've got Scott and Kim Holstein with us today with Twisted Alchemy. How are you guys doing?
Good. Great to see you. Thanks so much for having us.
I know. Usually when we're together, we have cocktails in our hand, but I mean, this will suffice for now. So, all right, Twisted Alchemy, for anyone that is unfamiliar, let's do a quick, before we dive into the journey of this path that got you here. What is Twisted Alchemy for those that are listening or watching? That's it. There you go. That's all you need to say.
Blood orange, lime juice. We are a cold pressed juice company designed specifically for the bar. So yes, oftentimes an afterthought. Assume it's just going to get done some magic way somehow behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So we're bringing a curated product managed at the farm level to provide an insanely fresh product that's unpasteurized but still has shelf life for your bar.
Right. And from farm to cocktail in the bottles, 750s, bibs, and also our new keg program. So
I love it.
A lot of versatile
we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about the bibs and the new keg program, which we're using all over the place. You know that. But, it's interesting because you look how the industry has continued to evolve and what's happened post-pandemic and all this stuff. The org chart and the labor models that we have now in in my world, as you know, is a lot of on the hotel side, right? So that labor model that we use is a little different now than it was, let's call it 15, 20 years ago. And that person that, we, so dependent on in our bar, which would typically be maybe a bar back, they're not really modeled for in a lot of our org charts anymore. So as a result, the idea that the cocktail industry has continued to just grow and evolve. Fresh juice is a given. It's a must. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it anymore, right? Well, the person that needs to get it done sometimes isn't there. And you swooped in with an alternative to that is just as good, if sometimes probably not better, than having some person in the back of the house doing their best to keep up with the volume that we're doing. And that's the way I like to describe Twisted Alchemy, is you were a solution to an issue we had.
I love that.
That's a great way to put it. We are, we're basically hospitality focused, but for the business owner, like for the entrepreneur, what do they, or for the operator or the manager, what makes their life easier? That's oftentimes how we look at a solution we're bringing. How can we reduce their labor? We know of a group in Chicago, Hog Salt, was one of our first, we're based in Chicago area, first groups to take us on system wide. And they cut their labor start time by 90 minutes across the entire set of restaurants. They had about 10 at the time, including New York and Vegas and Chicago. Because they don't need to squeeze, they didn't need to bring anybody to squeeze in juice in back of the house.
There's so many things, man. I mean, from squeezing the juice and the labor it takes to do it, to the shelf life of fresh squeeze, to being able to use your product. The other thing that I love about your product is consistency. With citrus, for us, if I'm buying it from, a vendor or the store, different times of the year, it's all over the board. Our Brix levels and the pH levels of the acidity, to where with you, I don't care what month it is, it's perfect every single time. And I think when we start looking, I hate to be like the big, I'm selling your product for you right now. You're supposed to be talking, yet I'm geeking out over telling people.
effective. Yeah.
Well, it
Yeah,
is. It's
because you're on the front line.
Yeah, and it's everything from consistency to, I mean, from a labor perspective, as you mentioned, to the fact that you factor all that into a consistency on the pricing across the board, where a lot of times in citrus it fluctuates all over the place. And you've gone and found additional solutions beyond just providing juice, because now you have the bibs, and now you have this keg program. So tell us a little bit about bibs for everyone that doesn't know that's listening. That's back in the box, right? So that's something that comes in a bulk. You keep it in the fridge. You're able, for us, we put it in glass bottles. So you pull up your glass bottle, you pull the trigger, it comes out. You got fresh juice. It's awesome. Tell us about
Yeah.
this keg program.
So, do you want to jump in?
Well,
All right.
sure. Why don't you?
Yeah. The keg program is kind of like it came out of COVID in the sense of like people need to really find additional labor solutions. Is there a way to provide a fresh cocktail to be poured at tap handle speed? And so we use a technology. Not everybody understands, and I didn't frankly understand until we got in deep into the weeds of making cold pressed juice. In order to deliver the juice with like a 6-month shelf life, which we have, like on this hand squeezed lime juice has 6 months, is we use a technology called HPP, or high pressure processing, which essentially takes flexible packaging, so it's got to be some sort of plastic, and puts it into a piece of equipment that simulates 37 miles below the ocean at pressure. And at those depth of pressure, it neutralizes all the live bacteria, but it never raises the temperature of the juice above 41 degrees. So you never kill the sugars or the enzymes in the product. And that is why it still tastes like it was just squeezed, even if it's months old. So we looked into the HPP processing, and we figured out there would be a way to use the same technology, but on a keg, a plastic one-way container keg, which we tested, and we figured out we could do it. They had to modify the equipment a little bit, but it gets us the same quality juice into a keg. And then kind of from there, we reached out to partners like Olivier at Patina Group and you guys to say, like, what cocktails, and Gary, what recipes would people want to see? Gary Groover at Marriott, what recipes would people want to see inside these kegs? And that is how we ended up kind of making it work.
It's such a win.
And for I was going to say like a venue, like a Moody Arena, or even like a hotel,
Or
Epcot, where you've got tons of people and you don't want people to have to wait in line, that you're just, those cocktails are coming off 100 to 120 per keg, and seamless,
Well,
no lines.
Again, like
fresh
you just said,
juice.
Kim, it's speed, it's consistency, yet at a super high quality at the same time. It's a win across the board. We use it often. We worked with Olivier putting it in at Space 220 in Epcot, which has been a huge hit. I know you guys have it at Moody Arena in Austin. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And then Banners Tap, Kitchen and Tap in Boston.
And it's
we're just onboarding Gaylord National in DC as well.
And I was about to say, there's more to come. I know for a fact our team is plugging it in all over the place. So let's
Right.
you've got this amazing product. Obviously, I don't know if anyone's noticed in the past 10 minutes that we've been on. I'm slightly a fan, but obviously you've got this great product. Let's talk about how you got to this point. So you have a very unique and interesting story. So pre-Twisted Alchemy, what got you to this point of having Twisted Alchemy? And we got to talk a little bit about the former life.
Yes.
Let's go. We'll take you
It's been a
back
twisted journey
to the former life. It's been very twisted. It actually did start with a twist. Scott and I met at a bookstore. It was a long, long time ago, and
Back when there was
at that
bookstores.
time,
I was mid 90s. Let's just say
yeah,
mid to late 90s.
It's the late 90s. Anyway, I was obsessed with an idea I was in advertising. Scott had been an actor. He had a theater company. And we were both trying to find something we were passionate about. And I had this crazy idea of a chocolate chip soft pretzel. And there were the bagel stores at that time. And the idea was to take a lot of the different flavors of bagels, but put them in a pretzel. And I couldn't stop thinking about these pretzels. And I met Scott. And
so we met. And my family, like growing up, we had the franchise rights to Ben and Jerry's in the all of Chicago, all of Illinois.
Okay.
So I used to manage stores like that. So essentially, we met and we're starting dating, and she had this idea for pretzels. I was at the time like selling mortgages or something horrible, horrible death spiral of future, just going to the train, getting on the train with my galoshes, wearing a suit. It was horrible. And galoshes, you don't hear that
Not
word a
often.
lot anymore.
Not often. Thanks for bringing it back.
Big rubber shoes that fit over your shoes. It's horrible.
Yeah.
They're like death.
We don't use them a lot on
like
the West Coast, by the way. So thanks for making sure we explain
I
that.
don't have
I've
galoshes.
never had galoshes myself, but
I'm gonna see if they still sell them. Anyway, I was like, hey, here's this awesome chick. We're dating. She has this great idea. And she's in this like underutilized world of advertising at the time. And I'm like, listen, you keep working, because she had the brains and the real job. I was basically commission sales. And let's start this. Let's try and make this thing work. So they didn't have Google at the time, but we started looking around. How do you make soft pretzels? And eventually, just by grit and not giving up,
and a lot of failure,
a ton of failures,
a lot of bad pretzels.
We got into the market making soft pretzels, frankly, originally selling to hospitality. That's how we started, selling to food service, hospitality, and got cobbled together some money and rented a little space and got people making hand twisted pretzels in the Chicago area. So I think like it really took off once we started we ended up applying. You want to talk about the QVC thing?
Well, no, first we did our first trade show, and it turned out it was a restaurant show. It was in Chicago, and the buyer for Barnes and Noble came around, and the first big win was that we were actually put into all the Barnes and Noble Starbucks locations with our pretzels. And that was like, wow. I mean, we were so excited. And then another opportunity that came around that was kind of a pivotal change in our trajectory. We received this letter from the Illinois Department of Agriculture that QVC was looking for products. And we submitted an application, and then they said, come to the Mall of America for the next round of displaying your products. And we went, and we thought it was like an office, and we went, and it was lines and lines of people that were just showing their products.
It was like a candle maker, some unique shovel, like literally like tables lined up through the entire mall.
Anyway, we did the presentation, and I mean, it was packed with these lines and lines of people, but we were selected to go on QVC, and it was near the holidays, and we sold out in like a couple minutes. We sold thousands and thousands of soft pretzels, and went on to work with them for 10 years. So it's a lot of detail, but it was some big moments as we built Kim and Scott's Gourmet Pretzels. We ended up going into the frozen aisle, selling in a lot of different grocery stores and national store, the Walmarts and
Targets and Kroger's and Whole Foods and all that stuff. So it's a whole different world, as you said correctly. Eventually we had like 100 people hand twisting pretzels all in Chicago at our bakery, because we refused to use equipment that didn't make the pretzels right. You could buy equipment to do it, but they're like little robots, and it didn't work. It didn't come out the way we wanted it to come out. you know.
Right. It was
So
missing that final. It was machine made in a
it
way
looked,
that,
it just didn't, it wasn't what we thought was like craveable and like something that we wanted to sell,
Sure.
you know, and we're proud of. So yeah, we hand twisted them, you know, and listen, by the end of it, well, eventually we pissed off the competing pretzel manufacturer so much that they basically bought us. They ended up uh, listen, we had 3 kids, you know, we had to put through college, and we're still putting them through college. Little kids, when they came up with a number, we're like, okay, you know, we'll do something else next. And
So, all right. So,
we
so before we even get into Twisted Alchemy, I wanted to, there's a couple of things that you brought up that jumped out at me. And I think it's important for anyone that's watching or listening, if you're thinking about doing your own thing or you're in the middle of trying to get your business up and going, you said a word that is that I use a lot, and the word was failure. And you talked about in the beginning going through the process of what it takes to find success, and in that process, you have to push through failure. It's inevitable, right? It's very, very rare that people don't find some form of failure in the process of success. Can you talk a little bit about going through that process? And look, failure is demoralizing. Failure is discouraging. um, Failure
right.
makes you second guess yourself on, did I make the right decision? Should I be doing this? Should I not be doing this? Am I good enough to do it? Right, the imposter syndrome starts to set in when those things happen. As you were going through that, what helped push you through to make you realize, no, like, we are in the right place doing what we're supposed to be doing?
Well, I don't know.
well,
I'm
first,
not sure
I
which
have to
failure you're going to
say,
choose. I have
okay,
a
well,
couple
first I have to
highlights.
say, someone once said to me, get comfortable with failure. And it really stays with me throughout the journey and today, because it's the more comfortable I get, the more I can see failure is not the end of everything, but like a nudge to go another route. So I don't know. That's where I come from. I mean, we've had so many failures along this twisted path. And
Well,
to not allow it to paralyze me, but to harness that energy to say, oh, go this way, go that way. What can I learn? I know you, Scott, we have different
all
opinions
right.
about
So
as you could
one of my
tell.
failures, like the one I relive, was we. If you ever been into a Jamba Juice, okay, smoothie
Yep.
shop, they have these soft pretzels, right? Okay, so somewhere in like 1999, I saw Jamba Juice was moving to Chicago. I saw in like the newspaper, like they were hiring managers or something. I'm like, God, you know what? A smoothie and soft pretzels make a great combination. They should be selling soft pretzels. So like I chased down the company that, you know, the folks that were the owners of the brand, and got them to test out some of our flavors that we were making. And they ended up taking us on across the country. And there was one point in which they underordered the amount of pretzels that they needed for the West Coast, which is where they were based. And they ended up having to like literally hire a jet, like a FedEx, and take the entire jet and FedEx pretzels to the West Coast. Long and the short of it is that we refused to pay for the shipping. The buyers were so upset that they essentially went out and found somebody else to knock us off. And we lost the business. And it was a tremendous amount of business. It was like $1 million worth of soft pretzels, which is a lot of soft
But
pretzels.
let me tell you, there's
Like,
another part to that. Wait,
yeah.
go on.
No, that was
Okay.
it. And we
Then
lost it. It was like, at that point, it was like a third of our business, and we couldn't compete on the price. And I was just demoralized and just was so
okay,
hurt
you
that they
were.
would drop us.
And it was hurtful, and we struggled. It was a struggle, right? But then right a couple months later, we landed Sam's Club National, and it
in
was
there.
so much larger than Jamba Juice. And it was right in the moment, it was so painful and scary. But then when we hung in there, we saw something actually better come through. And it just, it was the ups and downs, but the Sam's Club business was much more reliable. It was branded. There were a lot more benefits to that program.
Can
Yeah.
you also say
And
from that, Kim, there's two things I think that are great lessons for anybody. And number one is making sure that when something that like that happens, what did we learn from that process? Right. So, and that could be a combination of let's be careful that we're not, the old saying, jumping over dimes to save pennies. Sometimes on the front end, for me, I know when growing my business, I had to lose a little bit on the front end to really gain traction in the long run. So that's one learning moment that you potentially pulled from that. I think the second piece that you talked about was the fact that I believe personally that everything happens for a reason, right? Everything happens for a reason, the good and the bad. And so for me, when something like this takes place, I'm the first person to go, number one, what are we going to learn from it? And I push my team on that big time. It's like, hey, it happened. We can't change that. So what are we going to do different next time? Now knowing what we know. And the second thing is let's be very, very aware and sensitive to what door is about to open for us. Because if something happens and a door closes, it's because something else is going to open. You need to make sure that you are sensitive and aware enough to capitalize on it when it comes. And I've learned over the years of doing this and having failure along the way that my perspective of how I view things versus looking at something as, hey, guys, get ready. Something big's about to happen when failure takes place versus harping on, oh my God, look what just happened. What are we going to do? My perspective helps dictate what happens next. My emotions start dictating that behavior of what's around the corner. And I'm so thrilled that between the two of you, learning from what happened at the same time, being sensitive enough that when Sam's called, you were ready to open that door and capitalize on it the way you did.
absolutely. And I think I so believe with what you said, what I like to, it's like we're magnets. So we have to be really present with what we're thinking, and we can learn from those mistakes, those failures. And at the same time, we have to be ready for the great doors that are opening. And I think it's that we've had that balance between us. It happens all the time. And it's the great learnings of life, right? And it comes to life in this entrepreneurial path.
How many times do people that they're in their job, right? And let's say they aren't business owners like you guys or myself, and they're dealing with something at their work that is a struggle. It's a challenge, something they fail at something. The reality is the more time we spend thinking about what went wrong, it means that we're not thinking about how to prepare for what's next. And I think about how many opportunities are missed because we were so closed off to what was trying to come down our path because we're thinking about what happened previously. And I think this is a perfect
So
example
right.
What
of
is the
being
thing called?
open.
Say the
Yeah.
regret is the thief of the future or something like that.
Oh no.
What's
I
that?
like
Comparison is the thief of, yeah,
Comparison is the thief of what?
of joy.
Of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. I would say the same thing about regret,
I agree.
but
Actually,
listen. I'm
Chris,
not good at letting go, so I'm still pissed off about that geometry thing, which was literally 20 years. It was literally 20 years ago. And then the other thing, I don't know. Do you still want more failures? I got a couple more doozies.
I think that
We
we could
tried to
probably do an
install.
entire podcast or a few hours of just talking about between the three of us
Oh my God.
everything that's gone wrong at different times. I am curious.
I mean,
So, all right, you sell, and
yes, and that's
what brought you
part of
from
being
selling
overcoming
from
failure.
twisting pretzels to twisting juice and making twisted? How did that
That's right.
transition happen?
love that question. Well,
Well,
can I talk about one thing between
Yeah, of
those
course.
two? Because I think something really big that people don't talk about is the grief after a sale. Everyone thinks that, wow, that's something you sold a company, but they don't talk about like that you lose this like a child, right? Something that was so precious and that we had a lot of fun doing. And yes, we had failures and we had struggles, but it was a big loss. So I think that I just like to acknowledge it because it took a long time to find our grounding. And I know for myself, and I think for both of us, our passion is in being entrepreneurs. And so to come to another opportunity has been like an incredible part of life because it brought us back to a lot of that passion. Even though there's the failures and fears and struggles, it's also the joy of building. So
That's
it's just
Yeah, I
something
think
that
the love, yeah,
oh,
lesson is like if you love doing something, don't underestimate how much you'll miss it
well, I think
if you.
I mean, God, that's such a great point, Kim, in that when you launch a company, I hope you're doing it because you're highly passionate about it. Otherwise, for the love of God, don't put yourself through it, right? So you're
that's for sure.
and you're almost it becomes a piece of your identity. It becomes
Mhm.
you've birthed this, you've created something out of nothing, right? These companies that we have, mine represents my father. It's something that we took from nothing and now have created something very special. So when it goes away, it's removing a piece of you to an extent, and it there is a challenge. It's no different than it's what make restaurants so hard, right? Restaurants are super difficult to keep open. The margins are small, but most people that launch a restaurant believe they've got something special and they birth it. And when it doesn't work, when there's not a line of people that's supporting you that believes in it the way you do, talk about it. It rips your heart out a little bit because you have. I always say with cocktails, um, I've created and thrown away so many cocktails until I finally fell in love with one long before you ever knew anything about it. Right. So I will go through this process
Right.
to create, and same thing with music, right? You write words on a piece of paper and you throw them away until finally you fall in love with something. And that's a long time before anyone else gets to experience it and fall in love with it themselves. So I think you brought up a really good point that I agree. I don't think most people talk about the emotional roller coaster of selling, which is great if that's what you're wanting to do, but then also taking your baby away.
Yeah, the loss.
Yeah, big
I
grief.
and when you close a restaurant, when somebody closes a bar, restaurant, I know I've experienced it with friends, and I'm sure you have too. Of
When we
people,
did with our
and we
cafes
had two
too. We
restaurants
had
ourselves, and there's just like ghosts in there
Mhm.
of joyful moments that you can walk into that space and you can remember you remember these moments that you loved, and
Yeah.
moments of like people gathering there with you and having beautiful dinners and nights. We had a pretzel cafe inside of a children's museum. It
Oh,
was
wow.
awesome. It was the Cole Children's Museum in Illinois, Glenview. And we had a station where we gave them raw dough, like strips of dough, and they'd make a pretzel. We had a little placemat with how to make it, and we gave them like food coloring and paintbrushes, and they would paint the pretzels, and then we bake them for them.
Dude,
and they'd have pretzel twisting
this is
parties
It
and
amazing.
was
and we
so
had
fun.
pretzel
Can we bring this
and we had
back?
Yeah.
pretzel sandwiches.
Yes.
Oh, it was so
We
amazing.
still own the IP for
And we
it.
should have had a cocktail bar there
Yeah.
too.
And we
For the
made
Kristen
parents.
we made all the sandwiches were on pretzel bread that we made, and
and
it
pretzel croutons for the
pretzel croutons.
salads.
We It was such a fun experience, especially for kids and families. It was great.
That sounds like it.
But
All right, so how do we
we
get the
yeah,
Twisted Alchemy? How do like where
This is the twisted part, Scott.
so
What?
I well so after we sold, we were lost souls.
drinking
we
a
had
lot?
we, yeah, before we were drinking a lot. Um, we actually had a company before Twisted Alchemy too, in between,
Okay.
that it was called the Crave Bar. It was an ice cream bar that was a handmade ice cream bar fused to a salted caramel pretzel stick
And
that
dipped in
dipped in
chocolate.
chocolate. It was
That
insane.
sounds amazing,
Uh,
actually.
totally unscalable. Like, and
Especially
you
with
couldn't.
COVID, when COVID hit too. That was
Yeah,
a
it was
mess.
like it was a
Just
food
shot it
truck
all down.
thing. But that ended up going into kind of into the failure bucket. She might disagree with that, but I'll put in the failure side of the balance sheet. Some hubris and didn't want to let go of the pretzel brand, I think, or something. Anyway, back to Twisted Alchemy. So I have a history of bar. Like after college, I lived in France actually, and bartended in Paris. This was in early 90s. And let's just say, so I had some experience making cocktails and squeezing limes. So uh, I fast forward to after, in the, was it early 2000s, we used, our birthdays are in May. So we always have had a Cinco de Mayo uh, Mexican fiesta in May. And I refused to buy lime juice that wasn't fresh, or I would do it ourselves. And the party got kind of out of hand. It got to like 150 people, which was insane. And we couldn't execute. I couldn't execute what I wanted to with lime juice. So I started figuring out that I started searching for a way to do it that uh, would make a great cocktail, and that's how we ended up down this path.
Well, we
You
also
know,
knew from the food, being in the food business, we knew about HPP technology. And
yeah,
so Scott
but
was
it hadn't been
thinking,
like you had like Suja juice and Evolution juice, but then nobody was doing it in food service
Yeah.
right.
or hospitality on premise, anything like that. Went down the path of could we get involved? Could we find a way to solve this problem of being able to bottle or package or pre-squeeze juice that would taste like it was done in your kitchen or your bar? And the technology we figured out could be transferred. Now, I don't know how in the weeds you want to go, but the commercial juicing equipment that is out there on the market does not get you there, which is why we hand squeeze our lime juice in our facility, because all the commercial juicing equipment is designed to extract as much liquid from the produce.
Mhm.
So they call it domesticating or reaming. They literally call it reaming the produce, but that infuses all the oils from the pith and the skin. So we like tested every piece of equipment. We could not get the flavor right until we ended up doing it by hand with a sun-kissed, and we set up a line in Belize in order to do it. So we have like 30 sun-kissed juicers lined up and a bunch of very happy people that are squeezing juice, and it works. We get a really, really clean, refreshing product,
That's awesome. So you decided. So really, let's be honest. I'm like, you really started Twisted Alchemy for your own personal parties, like that. That was really let's cut through
That's
it all.
exactly
This
that.
was this was to make your personal parties better than they were before. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, we made a little investment in a juice company so we could buy the juice, and then they wouldn't do the business. Like they didn't have any interest in doing what we wanted to do once we figured out there could be a business there.
Okay. So what was the steps after you figured this out? You determined you can do this. You believe there's a business behind it. How did you get it from kind of ideation to, all right, this is something we're going to go after. How are we going to focus on it? Who's our target? Because you're really the first juice. Because look, let's be honest, you go to the store, there's juice everywhere. You're the first juice that has focused your entire, at least from an outsider looking in, your model is based on on cocktails, on bartenders, on the hospitality industry versus really an off-premise consumer. So how did you determine that that was going to be the direction you took with it?
Well, we were very focused on that particular market, and
I mean, it's genius,
we went out.
genius move on your part to do
Well,
that.
appreciate it, man. I don't know. I appreciate that, but that was the entire laser focus was, and I think that would be the answer: is focus on your market. Nothing in the consumer food and beverage business industry works without a market. Like if you don't have an interest, it doesn't matter how inexpensive something is or how great it is. If there's no market for it, you won't sell anything. I mean, there's just no, that's it. So we went and started talking to restaurant groups, influencers, guys like Gary Groover, like folks like yourself. We went down the tails of the cocktail and just presented it to people and got feedback, and ended up talking to folks like Let Us Entertain You in Chicago.
Sure.
And we got interest, and we tried to figure out, well, is there a business model that works? Does the pricing work based on what it costs us to get something done? And can we make it work like that? So
I'm gonna.
I hope that answers your
It
question.
does,
It
and
does.
you did something, and I'm going to give insight. I'm going to give some secret knowledge behind my company, that you did the same thing, whether you realize it or not. Was that you tapped into a market that was needed but not there, right? It's easy to say there was juice everywhere, but like I mentioned before, there was no one catering to this very specific niche market, right? And you came in and filled that void. So for Ellis Adams Group, for my company, many, many, many years ago, long before I ever knew I was going to be doing this for the rest of my life, I was a super young kid, and I was interacting with someone that was doing a sales position. And there was a company in New Orleans, Louisiana, that was formed that did insanely well. And I'm not going to go into details of who they were, but one day I happened to be sitting there, and they asked the owner of that company's mother. This is long, really before really internet and Google and that kind of stuff, to date myself a little bit. And they asked the mom, said, how did your son come up with this? And she said, crazy enough, he opened up I don't know if, for all those that don't know, there used to be these things that they would drop off at our house called phone books. And in the phone book would list the business section, right? And then you'd have all the personal numbers. And she said that he went through the phone book, and he literally went through the business section to try and find what was missing. And when he figured out this one area that was missing, he said, I'm going to start a company to fill a void. And for whatever reason, that stuck with me, and I never forgot it. So if you look at our company, EAG, I focus a lot of our attention, and as we continue to grow, in finding niches and areas where there's a gap, and we come in and fill the void. In most of what we do, it's not that we're the only ones that do it, but we many times are the only ones that do something very specific within it. And I use that as a model, that I'm going to fill a hole, a gap, for somebody that's not doing it. And you did that. You did that with Twisted Alchemy, that there was plenty of juice, but no one that really focused on hospitality, specifically on the bar scene, especially seeing that during that time, cocktails were on the uptick, all fresh, ingredients. And you came in and you filled a void, and in my opinion, you've seen it explode since. So very smart move.
I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate it.
Sorry. Well, I was going to say, also coming from that personal experience, that, wow, we really want that fresh juice in a cocktail, that really elevates the experience.
A huge difference.
And, that propels us forward, because it has such purpose. We like to say we elevate spirits of cocktails and people. That's our mission. And to really live that.
And also, like the cocktail world, like they're so dialed into details and, the alchemy of it all. And yet when it came to juice, it was like, well, whatever shows up, we'll use. Hopefully we get the yield on the produce we want.
Yep.
Hopefully the Brix levels are right. Hopefully, the rind isn't too big in the produce. Hopefully the number of pieces of produce in the boxes are correct.
Yep. Very prices of produce.
It fluctuates every single week. It fluctuates the cost of the produce. We actually hired a professor from the University of Wisconsin to go into properties that would let us in. So like a Marriott property let us in, P.F. Chang at the time let us in, and we did an analysis for like a week of every case of produce that they received. We weighed them. We checked how much yield they got out of
Wow.
the produce. We looked at how long it took them to squeeze it. We checked on how long the juice lasted. Everything fluctuated week to week. There were times when they would get 5 pounds less than what the case says on the side of the box that they would get. They would get a liter fluctuation between how much juice they could extract from the produce. So it made, like you're saying, like they didn't. I don't think people understood how much fluctuation and lack of control they have from operating, a squeezing on-premise program.
And it's our
So
margins are so small too that people don't realize that 5 pounds makes a huge impact on us on an operation, especially some of these bars and stuff where, they're not doing millions upon millions of dollars. And, you're praying to God. If you make 10 cents, you're loving life on every dollar. And
they're not tracking that loss. They're
yeah,
not tracking the cost. So you're right. We can deliver. I mean, I'm sounding like a sales pitch, but we can deliver one price for the year. And with 100% yield, on your juicing program, which is nice. It's just like, okay, done. We don't have to worry that it's going to change
yeah.
unless there's a hurricane, which we have
Or
problems.
some
Some massive drought. We get it solved eventually,
droughts,
but
right?
we in 95% of the time our prices never change throughout the year.
I have a question for you. You know, so you launched Twisted Alchemy. It's done really well. All of us are huge fans of it. You're in a lot of, you have a lot of big clients now. When the pandemic happened, obviously we talked a little bit earlier about the keg program helped stem from that. Aside from that, um, how challenging was that for you guys going through? And I know that's a stupid question. It was challenging for everyone.
No, man,
Actually,
horrible.
I do
This,
not love that
this is
question,
her
but
expertise.
I just, when I reflect on what we went through, I cannot believe we're all here today. I mean, it was, devastating when on that one day we were selling all hospitality. We lost every customer in the one day, and we were just wondering, what are we going to do? I mean,
nothing against Dr. Fauci. He would get on air and say, stay away from bars and restaurants.
Yeah.
And then
And
he'd
don't
say,
drink
stay
the
away from health
juice.
clubs.
Like, what?
He always led with bars and restaurants. I'm like, couldn't you lead with health clubs once in a while? Like, you have to lead with bars and
Yeah.
restaurants.
So we were devastated and we panicked, and but then we calmed down, we shut down our office, kind of hunkered down at home. And then people started to, there was more of like connecting with people, and realizing people were crafting cocktails at home, and we could take the bar home, take our juices home, help elevate the spirits of people who really needed it. And so we started our whole direct to consumer kits on our website, and
TwistedAlchemy.com.
cocktails to go. And we just tried to be scrappy and anything and everything we could possibly do to elevate spirits with our juices in these different channels.
So that channel still exists today, and we do a great curated holiday kit programs, and throughout the year people can buy directly from our website. So I mean, it's representing about 10% of our revenue, but it's robust, and listen, from the pandemic birthed this direct to consumer business that really gives people an incredible program that's like pro level bar at their house.
I was going to say, we also did these Zoom experiences where we would send kits to people at companies all over the country and bring the teams working remote. And we would curate cocktails with like the company's name, like the Amazon Teeny, or just a special curated cocktail for a toast. And so we had this experience of not only selling the juices and the kits, but also something more connecting all of us together. It just was another
And we use
part of
we
COVID.
started selling this line of cocktail
rimmers and
garnishes and also like jiggers and stuff from Chris Adams' design collection.
And I
Chris, that's
appreciate
where
that.
your amazing bar tools,
Dude, the bar tools are
which we
lit.
still get from you today.
Yeah.
One, thank you, much appreciated. And I love the
Well, thank
fact
you.
that, again, out of difficulty, something fabulous was birthed. And I think that, again, goes back to, as an entrepreneur, there's never a time where your brain's not looking for what's next, or how do I push, how do I expand, how do I keep growing. And as much as, my God, the pandemic was horrible and a tragedy for everyone, you still have to look back and smile at some of the things that were birthed from it. And when I say smile, I don't mean smile because of what happened, but grateful that you were given the opportunity to be able to create what you created. I remember the live sessions that you guys were doing, and it was cool to see the entrepreneur kind of almost rebirth of saying like, "Hey, let's not settle in here. Let's push and figure out how to keep moving this thing." And now here you are out of the pandemic, business is booming again. And now you've got a whole nother division of your company that would have probably never come to fruition or come to life if you weren't put in that position. And so that's a cool thing to see. And again, speaks to that entrepreneurial mindset at all times.
Thanks, man. It's been quite a journey.
It's been quite a journey.
So I have a question for Kim. I see you've been featured on many different things in different magazines and publications. I want to talk about a little bit, and Scott, if you can head out if you want. I'm just kidding. I want to talk about seeing the transition continue to evolve, the struggle, yet also the growth, hopefully, of what it's like to be a female that is leading a company alongside Scott, but also a leader in the industry. So, what has that been like, and how have you seen it grow? Have you seen us grow as a culture and society, and doing better in looking at the females in leadership positions?
Wow. I think that it's been, I want to say yes. I think that there's, with all the different, it's been, I don't even know where to begin. I just want to say, I mean, it's been in the past, I would say maybe 7 years, the Me Too movement, a lot of voices, a lot of people standing out, speaking up, a lot of initiatives with diversity and equity, inclusion, getting more and having more women lead in the industry and as entrepreneurs. I mean, it's been exciting. I think there's been inroads. There's still challenges with funding, to be honest. And I think that makes it more difficult at a larger scale. But I've definitely seen changes, especially over from pretzels to juice. And I'm grateful, I think, Scott and I, and how we lead and how he's been, supportive. But we have a lot of women that work in our team. We also support Speed Rack, the Speed Rack research for breast cancer, and all the female bartenders in that competition. And so, I don't know, I'm giving you kind of a double. There's been strides. There's been great stories of success and impact. And then at the same time, probably more frustration in terms of funding, lack of, investors investing in women, much smaller percent. And that needs to change. but there are some amazing women out there leading in hospitality, and that's exciting. And
Yeah,
I love this industry.
I know, and
Yeah.
it's on one hand, you're excited to hear that strides have been made, but we're not there.
Mhm.
Right, and I think it's
No.
important to make sure that that conversation continues to happen. I'm very fortunate that I have a prettier half that is much smarter than I. That anyone that knows our company knows she's the one that actually is the one running everything. I just I get to do this kind of fun stuff, and we have a large number of females that work at EAG as well, and I agree. It's great to see that strides are made, but we're not there. And I think that it's important that the conversation that it doesn't fall off, that the conversation continues to happen. And you keep, we have to keep pushing to hopefully one day get it where it's supposed to be. And celebrating the wins as they come, but not settling in and assuming that's as good as it's going to be either. So, thank you for being a leader
Absolutely.
and out in front of that and helping with the charge.
Well, and thank you for making it important, and it's people like you and all of us working together so that we're all elevating and lifting others, and I just think it's really important. And so thank you.
Hey, look, it's a learning curve. I think I don't think if it would have in full transparency, um, if the conversation hadn't truly started, I don't know that I would have recognized it in full transparency because it wasn't something that I was specifically trying to or not to do. I was just living life. And the fact that now I'm put into the conversation and I'm forced to make sure I pay attention to it. I'm learning more about it to ensure that we're making the best decisions possible. That only happens if we have these types of conversations and don't let it fall by the wayside. So I think every day is a part of the journey.
Absolutely. And I think a huge part of that is transparency and mentoring. And I know before we were talking a little bit about mentoring, and I think that that's such a critical piece of the next generation being mentored and supporting along the way, helping people to grow and learn. And
I care deeply about
Yes,
mentoring. I have gotten to
I
a
love that
point.
about you.
I
Well,
need
look,
your help on that side.
I've gotten to a point, and I think it's the older I've gotten. Look, you over time you change. If you anybody that says they think the exact same way they did 25 years ago is a very scary proposition. Like I hope to God everyone I talk to, like I'm different now than I was 25 years ago. I think differently. I've matured. I've evolved. I've been exposed to things that have changed my view in certain areas, and I'm grateful that I've been able to evolve and change. And a part of that is the fact that I've had mentors, that I've had people that have helped guide me, that have had tough conversations with me, that have told me when I was wrong, that and I was, thank God, put in a position to where it helped force change on myself. And as a
Mhm.
result, I think now that I'm older, I I care so much about seeing other people win. Like I'm obsessed with seeing other people win. I want to hear about their success stories. There's enough cheese for everyone. And the fact that I play some very small role potentially in someone else's growth and development the same way someone did for me, and hearing them tell me how they've changed, they've evolved. That's the reason why we do it, at least for me. EAG is
Yeah.
nothing more than it's the avenue that allows us to do those types of things and help people get to the place that they're supposed to be in life. And so, um, big fan of making sure that I'm doing my part as best I can for someone else.
I love that. And you know what? You make me just love this industry because it's people like you. It's just it's your good your values and your intentions and all of who you are and what you're doing. It's just like we're raising the vibes. It's
You know,
I'm really grateful. you,
I
truthfully.
appreciate it. But I can tell you that that's a journey, right? I think I always feel like at my heart I was a very good person. I wanted to see the best in people. I'm always been an optimist, but I think there's a journey in life of you know, you make stupid decisions when you're young. You learn from it, you evolve, and hopefully in the process start to evolve into the person you're supposed to be and not the person you were becoming. Um, and I think this industry, and I'm curious your take on this, the two of you. Everybody's a fan of you going after your dreams and achieving something until you start to achieve it. Um, I, and I'm what I mean by that is when you've got nothing and you lay out to someone like, hey, I'm going to try and do this. Everybody's your biggest fan. Oh my God, go after your dreams. That's so awesome. And the minute you start finding some real success, it's amazing the number of people that come out that want nothing more than for you to fail. and and you
I hear
right, you start to learn in the process of success that, you know, they say it's lonely at the top, right? And the little wins you start to get, you start to see the people that you thought you had around you that were your biggest support system starts to thin out a little bit as you start to find
now, yeah,
success.
quiet,
Have you
like
dealt with that?
quietly, a little bit. And the friends you thought were going to be there for life, uh, just somehow disappear. They just
Well,
is my experience.
yeah. You know what I think is that the more we have authentic community and authentic
Yeah.
connections, I think it probably happens less because then people can really be championing you and want you to keep growing and creating and transforming and doing all you're doing. And that it really isn't that, oh, you reach one moment that is like the moment of success. It's really like the whole journey, because I think we've talked about it. We had, something that might look like, oh, that's a big win. And we shared, wow, that was a grieving moment.
Yeah.
So I think people put a lot of assumptions about where you are and wow, you've reached this point, right?
Especially with social media now, right? I mean, our whole life is based on whatever is you posted. That just must be reality, I assume, right?
Right. And that's
So
why too, I'm sorry, I was going to say one more thing was this format is so great because you have this conversation and we can really, we've already had thought the world of you, but I love this kind of
yeah,
conversation.
Well, I
Yeah.
so
appreciate
I'm dying to ask him. Yeah, it's awesome. I appreciate the free form aspect of this. So I want to go back and ask you about mentorship. Uh, how do you how do you how do you get better at mentoring others if you've not had a mentor yourself? That I'm speaking for a friend, speaking for me.
asking for a
Uh,
friend.
I don't. I grew up kind of like in the entrepreneur scene, right? With Kim and I, really, and I don't have the experience of having been mentored well, and I don't think I'm a good mentor for people. I want to be better at it. Let me just put it that way.
Look, I will. This is what I'll tell you. Stop labeling it. You know,
Mhm.
Mhm.
there's not a every Tuesday at 2 p.m. is my mentor session with someone where I sit down and go through a workbook that I have and they fill out paperwork. A lot of times am I doing my best to do exactly what we're doing right now, one on one with somebody else? Do I have
Uh-huh.
I can tell you that the number of people that reach out either through our website or social media that says, "Hey, I'm wanting to do X. I'd love to pick your brain." I don't know one scenario that I've said no. I will find time for someone that I have no clue who they are, what they're trying to do, to give them 10 minutes of my time for them to ask me questions, for me to give them honest, transparent answers. That's mentorship. It doesn't mean that I have to
Yeah.
take them to lunch every week. It doesn't mean that I have to sit down and give them hours upon hours, but if somebody for me, if somebody's looking for help, am I willing to give them my perspective or what I've dealt with? The answer is yes. Am I making sure that every single time that I'm engaging with someone, I'm doing it with a purpose? that they potentially are taking something I've said and are going to do something with that, good or bad. Am I paying attention to how I treat others? Because how I make them feel many times determines their actions and what they do next. And if I've done something that is going to minimize or diminish their actions upon what they could be doing to maximize who they are, that's on me. Now, I will tell you, I have also learned how to say no. I've also learned, and when I say no, what I mean by that is I've learned to when there's if I can't give you the best version of me, I need to say no. Now that's not giving 10 minutes to someone that wants to ask me questions, but if one of my best friends Gary calls me and says, "Hey, I've got this project I need you to handle." If I can't give Gary the best version of me, then someone on my team needs to give them the best version of them. I can't necessarily take
Uh-huh.
on everything myself, right? Because I believe that you deserve the best version of me at all times. My team deserves the best version of me at all times, regardless of what's going on at my company, regardless if it's a good day, a bad day, a client's happy, a client's mad. That should have zero bearing on you getting the best version of me. And the reason I say all that against your question of
Yeah.
mentorship is I view mentorship as every interaction I have, whether they're looking for me as a mentor or not. My engagement with someone potentially has an impact on their life. And so
So what's a great go ahead. Well, I was going to say, what's your best tip or tips on how to give criticism to people in your organization?
so we lead 100%. Ask anyone on my team. They will tell you, like, without blinking an eye, radical candor. Phenomenal book. Kim Scott's the author of it. I highly encourage anyone, if you haven't read it, read it. It's called Radical Candor. It is, in my opinion, one of those must-haves to understanding the core of any organization's ability to move forward. And the reason why is radical candor says I need to be able to speak truth and love at all times to anyone on my team and vice versa. But you always know that where I'm coming from and the place where it comes from, right? So it's never about criticism. And the best example I can give is this: you have kids. I have two daughters as well. And I look at when my kids were, say, 13, 14 years old, and I say, if my 14-year-old was doing something that I know is going to hurt her future, am I going to say something? Well, of course, right? That's a no-brainer. Of course you're going to say something. And I'm going to say something to that 14-year-old, knowing that I'm going to take the wrath of the 14-year-old that's slamming doors and telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm old and all these things. But I'm okay taking on that responsibility because I love her that much, right? The minute that I
Mhm.
refuse to have those types of conversations with my team, I'm basically telling them, I see you are doing something to hurt your future. Your behavior is keeping you from a promotion. Your behavior is not going to get you where you want to be in life. Your behavior potentially is going to get you fired. But because I don't want confrontation and I don't love you enough, I'm not willing to have that conversation with you. That's what we're telling them. When
Mhm.
we're not willing to have a tough conversation, I'm telling you, I don't care about you enough to actually have that conversation. I'd rather see you just fail at some point and get out of my hair. I don't, at my company, I don't hire that way. I care to a fault about my team. I will let it go too much before you finally have to say enough's enough. And it's not because I'm not having conversations, because people are always going to make mistakes, right? That's called being human. And we actually encourage our team to fail forward, learn how to learn from your mistakes. But when we start having habitual behavior, that's no longer a mistake, that's a habit. And now we need to find ways to correct
Yeah.
the habit so you don't continue to make those same mistakes. And if you make a choice to not want to correct the habit, I can sleep well at night knowing that I have done everything in my power to put you in a position to succeed, and you have chosen not to.
Mhm.
Right? That's a very different situation from a leadership perspective. So for us, we talk about radical candor almost on a weekly basis. There is never a time that our team doesn't know that radical candor is always at play. So when those conversations happen, it's a hell of a
They're
lot
giving
easier.
it to you. They're giving it to you. They're giving it to you also. They're giving it to you. They're giving it to you. You. They're giving it to you also. 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 They're giving it to you also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, that's something you have to learn as a leader, to listen. It's not easy
Yeah.
because you
No.
know, you immediately, well, this is my company, I did this, I've already been through this, and you quickly
Oh,
want to
yeah.
respond. And it's something on a daily basis. I have to make sure, listen, because that's the purpose of radical candor, is they have to be comfortable enough to be able to speak
Mhm.
in truth and love, and we can listen to each other. So there you go.
That's some heavy stuff.
There's my.
It's good.
I love that.
Truth and love.
You are an inspiring leader, and
Fuck yeah.
you know what? It's great. I feel like every time we talk to you, we learn something. Really, you're a great teacher.
Well, I appreciate that, and I can't thank
You really
thank
are.
you both enough for coming on, sharing the story of Twisted Alchemy, your journey, the good, the bad, the ugly. I can't wait till we're together next time so we can have some pretzels. I have big expectations now.
I made some this year, for the first time in like 15
Oh, dude!
years.
Next
Yeah.
time I'm in
From
Chicago, we have to have pretzels.
I will
We'll
make
make
you
some
some.
pretzels.
If you're here, I will make you some. Give me
We
like
had
a
not
week's notice.
we had not twisted a pretzel in 11 years.
Look on my
It
Instagram.
was
You'll
so
see the
funny.
I
pretzels.
love it. I love it. So look.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, of course. So let me ask, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, if they want to try and figure out, there might be restaurant, bar owners, hotel operators that are listening. They want to, hey, I want to check out Twisted Alchemy. Give them the best ways to get in touch with you.
Well, they can follow us on Instagram, Facebook. They can also email us hello@twistedalchemy.com, or Kim or Scott at twistedalchemy.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can reach right out to us.
They'll be that'll be the easiest way. And Drink Twisted Alchemy is the handle on Instagram.
Love it.
And that's probably the easiest way. Or as Kim said, email Scott or Kim.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you
At
so
Twisted
much. I can tell you, our team, we use your products constantly. We're putting them into our clients' operations. We have it actually at our operations that we own. That's all we use is Twisted Alchemy. So we definitely stand behind everything you guys are doing. Thanks for everyone that's been joining us today. I am Chris Adams here on the Pink Elephant. You can find me at Chris Adams Official, ellisadamsgroup.com, Ellis at Ellis Adams Official. We're all over the place. Make sure you follow along with us, and we look forward to checking you out next week. Have a good one.